It's my honor and privilege to introduce you to the next speaker. He's somebody who really doesn't need an introduction. He is Mr. Cyril Shroff, who's the managing partner of Cyril Amarchand Mangaldas. He has about 38 years of experience in range of areas, including corporate law, security markets, banking infrastructure, and others. Rated as India's top corporate banking and project finance lawyer by several international surveys. He is a legendary figure in the Indian legal community and is consistently ranked as the star practitioner in India. And he's also regarded as the M&A king of India. So without any further introduction, let me welcome Mr. Cyril Shroff. Mr. Shroff, welcome. Good morning. We look forward to your opinion.
Thank you.
Comment.
So should I start?
Yes, Mr. Shroff.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Batra and Business World for having me on this webinar. It's a great privilege, and I think it's a very timely conversation as well, given all that is going on. The topic that I'm going to speak about is really about navigating your law firm through COVID and beyond COVID. And it's essentially, about a leadership journey. Because what is happening in the last 6 months was in no playbook, neither of industry, government, or professional service firms. And we've all had to navigate through this using our intuition, our intellect, and our values. But as we sit here today at almost 6 months since the beginning of the work from home and kind of the lockdown, there are some leadership lessons which I think clearly stand out. And speaking also to a number of my managing partner colleagues globally and sharing experiences to see how much is kind of resonating with other similarly placed leaders as well. I have kind of distilled down about 10 leadership lessons, and I'll go through them one by one, and that can set the stage for probably the Q&A at the end. So leadership lesson 1, I think, is that over communication is significantly better than under communication. And it's the key duty of leadership of whichever organization, and especially people organizations like law firms, to communicate and give confidence to your teams and people. And it must be with a tinge of realism. It is a hard balance to strike between being realistic, sharing the bad news as well as the good news, and continue to be brutally optimistic. I always say in our firm that bad news takes the escalator and good news takes the stairs. So that's because we give time to people to process it. So that's leadership number 1 on communication. The second leadership lesson, I think, is about really the pain and relief. So I believe that pain travels from top to down and relief needs to go from bottom to up. What does that mean? It means really that the people in the most senior positions in the organization, which in a law firm say would be the equity partners or the senior leaders, should bear the most pain, and the junior people, whether they're associates or staff members, should bear the least pain, because this whole situation is going to create some pain. It is impossible to assume that there is going to be no suffering as a result of it. But who should bear it and in what proportion? So this pain should start at the top and be the least at the bottom. And when relief starts coming in, when things get better than you expect, then it should start going from bottom to up. So that's leadership lesson number 2. I think there's a famous book also called Leaders Eat Last. Leadership lesson number 3, and I think this is probably true for many people have noticed, is that remote working works. And I think a part of it is here to stay forever, even beyond whenever this whole thing ends and we are back to some kind of a new normal. I do believe that part of this unique way of working is going to stay forever. It's probably not going to be as much. So the general, rough rule of thumb was that before Corona, it was sort of 90% work in office and 10% remotely, because some companies had that. During Corona, which is this period, I think it's the other way around. I think it's about 90% working remotely and 10% people do come to office. But in a post-Corona world, I think it's going to be about 50-50. That's my prediction. And this is going to have profound implications on a number of things, including office space, technology, how you hire. It's going to impact and percolate down everything. So leadership lesson number 4, and this is quite directed at professional service organizations, including specifically law firms, is that having diverse counter-cyclical practices is helpful and helps in reducing pain. For example, a large law firm will have transactional practices, advisory practices, and contentious practices as well. Because of that, they're able to deal with this better. If currently you are primarily a disputes-focused practice with the courts being shut, I think the impact on it would be disproportionately high. So I think one key lesson going forward is that to have a broader range of practices, some of which are counter-cyclical, is a wise thing to do. Leadership lesson number 4, and this may sound a little self-serving for the law firm world, is that professional services organizations and law firms in particular do better in the general economy. We are seeing what's happening in the real economy. There's minus 23% GDP growth. Many companies, once the moratorium is lifted, will go into some kind of bankruptcy or stress situation. And in that situation, the normal reaction would be, how can law firms or how can professional service organizations do well? They will do as well or as badly as their planned. Surprisingly, that's not how it has worked. And apparently, that's not how it worked, I believe, in the global financial crisis 10 years ago as well. Because what happens is that in times like this, the complexity is higher, and good advice reduces the uncertainty. This whole period is full of uncertainty, and therefore the demand for quality legal advice, and particularly judgment-based advice, goes up exponentially. So what happens, therefore, is even in the clients as well as for law firms, the strong get stronger, and you can see that in the corporate world as well. The strong are getting stronger, and the others struggle. So there are two groups of clients, one who are going to get stronger and one who are going to get weaker. But the good news for law firms is that both need quality legal advice. Leadership lesson number 5, that cultural fragmentation and emotional alienation are real issues. And these are far more severe at lower levels in the organization. Your associates are feeling the most alienated. The partners somehow have a way of being in touch with society or in being in touch with each other and are able to handle the isolation better. So from a leadership point of view, you have to take care of not only the physical health of your teams by keeping them uninfected or support them if they do get infected, but also the emotional health and mental health. And as a firm, we also, we're very conscious of this, and we ran many sessions on mental health as well. Leadership lesson number 6. This is a bit of a forecast, but it is still founded in experience. Is I think that the post-COVID world will be very different in some material ways. What are some of these material ways? First, I think that there will be a hybrid operating model. This work from home, work from office, or work from anywhere. I mean, in theory, you could have people sitting in remote places where the firm doesn't have an office and still be engaged in the firm. So this is going to result in a new social contract between the organization and its people. It's going to have various forms of commercial arrangements with different levels of roles and responsibilities as well. And this aspect is going to be reinvented. What does this further mean? I think also that there will be a lot of new practice areas and sector focuses as well. And I can visualize a few years down the line that law firms will become more general business advisory as well, such as they will need to hire a lot of non-lawyers as well. For example, people who are fluent in technology. Uh, the third prediction I would make for the post-COVID world, whenever that happens, is that the pecking order of firms and brands may get disrupted. The strong may either get stronger or may get significantly weaker. So it's like if you take a can of beans and turn it upside down and then turn it up again, will they be in the same order that they were before you turned the can upside down? That can never happen. So the pot has been truly stirred. There is a lot of change, and the impact of the stirring of the pot will fall differentially on different firms. You may either go up or you may go down, but you will not be at the same place that you were before this started. So the post-COVID world will be significantly different in material ways, and I think a wise leader of or the leadership group of the partnership will try and imagine what that will be and be ready for it. Next leadership lesson, I think, is that I believe that great innovation will occur, both in terms of the operating model as well as in the access to justice. Currently, there is a low phase in the access to justice because the courts are closed. But to be fair, I think courts have adapted as well. They have adapted through online courts for urgent matters, and it's still early days. But what I do expect in the next couple of years is that there will be tremendous innovation in the access to justice space. So there were a number of theories in terms of how that should go forward, but these were all kind of scenarios which would have come alive in 2030. What has happened because of the crisis is that 2030 has arrived in 2020, and that is forcing and will continue to force more and more innovation, and particularly as the whole notion of the idea of justice being a place which you go to will move from being a service that the state will provide to you. Our current notion of justice is that you go to the court, knock on its doors, and you get justice, for which you have to go to a place. And that is where the problem is because of social distancing and all the other complications that we are having just now. But if that idea were to change to a service that could be dispensed with by the use of technology and other newer methods of innovation, you will see a lot of innovation there happening. Next lesson that I picked up and I believe will happen is that the globalization of the law will retreat. It will, for at least in the foreseeable future, go into reverse gear, and localization of law will increase. Why? First, just look at this in terms of travel. I think it's impossible to travel. For global law firms to go and plant red flags and red pins all over the world to open more and more offices is counterintuitive now. These are just going to result in significantly higher costs without adequate benefits as well. So these massive global multinational firms will continue to be global firms, but they will go into shrink mode. They will reduce their size and become smaller, and nobody is going to be in a rush to go and enter new markets. So globalization will retreat, and there is another way of delivery as well. So if the pandemic and the lockdown has proved anything, it is that you can sit anywhere and work and dispense legal advice. It doesn't matter where you are. This interview or this webinar in ordinary times, I would have been in the studio. I'm sitting here in my home study and giving this interview, and it's just an indication of what lies ahead in terms of the practice of law more generally. So this has a number of other implications as well. I think there will be a greater increase in the role of networks and collaborations, which will increase manifold. So as the global law firm model goes into shrink mode, what will go into expand mode is more networks, more friendships, more informal alliances, and where people will see the need for reaching out and holding hands. From a internal lawyer's point of view, this is going to mean that you will need to be far more culturally adaptable and flexible, and being ready to deal with different demands and different cultures. If, for example, you are in a global firm, it has its own culture and way of dealing with, which is kind of standard, even if it is an office in different locations. But when you're in a disaggregated model, where there are many dots, each having their own unique culture, dealing with each other at arm's length, but in a hand-holding model, that is going to require a new skill from lawyers who practice in the international community, which is of cultural adaptability and flexibility. You can no longer say, okay, this is how I do it in my firm, and you just do it my way. You will have to be more sensitive to how it is done by others and find a common medium. The other impact of the retreat of globalization is that going to be that brands will matter. Because when you look into a market from outside, you don't know the nuances of who exactly is good at what. You have a kind of a reputational flow through coming through to your market. So if a firm in America wants to know about what is happening in India or China or Australia, they will go by what are their brands that have kind of filtered through into the international reputation space. So brands will matter, and they will matter more than they did before in a world where people kind of built one-to-one friendships. Uh, Referral networks will also involve greater reciprocity. So in this, hand-holding model, one thing which will happen is that as firms deal with each other on a principal-to-principal basis, they're going to say, if I refer a matter to you, what are you going to give back to me? So there will be a bit of a barter system that will get more focused as the globalization of legal practice moves into a different format. So that's about globalization. Then let me talk about business development. I think business development has already changed in a dramatic way, because it is now no longer based on physical meetings, going and calling upon somebody in the office or taking them out to lunch or meeting them over a drink. At least for the short term, now 6 months has gone, and I can see at least for another 12 months, at least at a minimum, that's gone forever. It's very difficult to kind of build new relationships in this kind of way. But instead, what has happened, I think, is that existing relationships will get deeper. So I believe that business development will become more vertical rather than horizontal. In horizontal, you're trying to get many relationships across, whereas when you move to a more vertical relationships, you have fewer relationships, but you go deeper. And it's all, the good side is that it's also harder to lose clients, because in an environment like this, clients prefer, there's a flight to safety and flight to familiarity. So if somebody knows you already from before, they are likely to trust you more than actually trust somebody new who kind of approaches them. It's a human psychology of trust the familiar. This is also a great opportunity, particularly for multi-practice firms, which could be as little as 2 practices or as many as 20 practices. It's a great opportunity to cross-sell other practices, and therefore institutionalize your client base. When a client is working with you in 2, 3, 4 practice areas, he becomes an institutional client, and not somebody's client who can, where if a partner leaves, he can take them with me. If there are multiple hooks across the organization, that client becomes institutional. That in this process of going deeper and becoming more vertical, you will have greater institutional clients. And also because now this is now no longer just a legal problem, and it's also become a complex business problem for many organizations. You will actually, as law firm and service providers, we will have to go to clients with solutions and not just be on the back foot trying to solve a problem when it arises. I think what clients appreciate these days, if you were to say, okay, I know that you have this problem, I know you have a severe debt problem with banks. Now, this is how we think we can help you restructure. Or maybe if you did a M&A transaction in this space, which could look something like this, that this is an idea you should explore. So I think law practice will become more front-footed and less reactive to problem solving, and it's going to be a bit more business problem solving. So these are my 10 leadership lessons that I've learned in the last 6 months, and also some of my forecasts of what lies beyond this phase. And to make sure that it's not theoretical and how we've actually applied it in our own firm, I'll just give a few illustrations of how some of these lessons have actually been practiced by us. So we went on full work from home from 17th of March, and we literally flipped a switch. And because we were already on the cloud for many years and our technology was ready for it, it was completely seamless. We also constituted a what we call a crisis management team, which dealt with all aspects which arose out of this crisis, and that's been an amazing team, which provided all the support, regular communication. They would have sent hundreds of mails to people saying, okay, this is what is happening, here is what you need to do, and being available. So it was that lesson number 1 on communication. The other kind of learning, and it's probably more a hero and a war story as well, is that how we were able to do so many matters remotely without people meeting each other. So we were involved on one of the first QIP transactions that happened on a capital raise. And it's unimaginable that it could have been done without a physical meeting. The entire transaction was completed without anybody meeting anybody. It was completed all in cyberspace. So it was a new way of working. It was challenging, but it also showed us what is the art of the possible. We also implemented the theory of pain goes down and relief goes up. And in terms of really how we were preparing for a more adverse economic year, which thankfully has not happened, is that we first made the senior people at least temporarily take some pain. We focused a lot also on mental health and also spiritual health issues. We ran a whole series on the Bhagavad Gita with a renowned spiritual teacher, which was very, very helpful. We did a number of thought leadership initiatives, many of which are on national television and on cyberspace. We did not affect our hiring, so we've not withdrawn a single offer that was made to a new associate. We've honored all that, and we kept our talent engine alive. We did our normal routine promotions to senior associates and partner promotions and things like that. So these are examples of how we not only learned the lessons, but also practice them, because it's also finally about how you talk the walk rather than just walk the talk. So just to conclude, many lessons and many hero stories. But the surprising thing is that, in ordinary times, all the hero stories happen at the senior level and the management level. Some of our best hero stories actually happened on the front line with small people who you never would ordinarily have imagined. It was that IT staff who supported more than 1,000 people 24/7. It was the office boy who, despite all of this, still came to office in case something was required. It was the guys who kept the engine running despite everything. So these people are normally forgotten in ordinary times. But what surprised in this crisis is that the hero stories occur as much at the senior level as they do occur on the front line in otherwise what would have been an anonymous situation. So I'll end over here. We have about another 10 minutes, and I'll be happy to take any questions from Dr. Anurag Batra.
Thank you, Mr. Shroff, for being so eloquent, and you brought about the humane side of law firms and legal leaders. When I was listening to you and taking notes on your 10 leadership lessons, I think you encompassed what's happening to every part of the business and not just to legal firms. And legal firms are intertwined with its clients and businesses and the business environment. You basically said, when you cannot go out, go within. search for women. Mental well-being is very important. And Mr. Shroff, thanks for saying what you said is leadership lesson 1. I believe in over-communicating. I've been saying it to my colleagues for 20 years. Over-communication is better than under-communication. So thank you for saying that, because at least communication can be a bridge to comfort, if I may use. It can also be a bridge to problem solving. Now, you also gave examples of what have you done in your firm. I want to ask you 2 specific questions. What do you think will happen to mergers and acquisitions post-COVID? Do you see it slowing down? Do you see it accelerating? Give us a sense of view.
Accelerating, because I think apart from this phase where also there is a reasonable amount of M&A activity as well, but I think we're sitting on the threshold of probably the golden age of M&A. There will be many transactions because in 6 to 12 months from now, businesses, when they come out on the other side of this, are going to look very different. And many of them will see the compelling need of doing some transaction, which could be either selling out to somebody else or recapitalizing or restructuring as well. So we are going to see an explosion. And we've seen this happen in other crises as well, any other global, including the global financial crisis as well. Crises of this magnitude, and this is actually a much bigger crisis than the GFC, is that on the other side of it, you will see a tremendous amount of M&A activity of all kinds. Some of it will be equity based, some of it will be even debt oriented. I think you might see debt instruments leading the loan to own sort of modality of M&A as well. So it's going to be very frantic.
Okay, and what is your take on equi-hiring? You talked about technology, you talked about business development, you talked about non-legal professionals, immersion in legal services being more. So do you think law firms will look at equi-hiring talent?
Yes, but not. Sorry, can you repeat that?
When you acquire partners, you're essentially doing equi-hiring. So law firms have been doing it for many years. But from a technology standpoint, from a legal tech standpoint, do you see law firms doing a lot of equi-hiring over the next 18 months?
A little bit. I don't think it will be that high, at least not in the next 5 years. So some of it will happen, particularly in order to fill specific notches or gaps in the organization. But I think that a number of, at least some of the bigger firms will first shrink before they grow again. Because, I think there's this theory that, never waste a good crisis. So what this is forcing almost every major organization, including some of the bigger law firms, is to really look inwards and see where are the inefficiencies and, where are the people, not, carrying their own weight. So I think many law firms will first clean up that. So they will first shrink and then they will grow. And when they grow, they will be very thoughtful of what kind of hiring they do on what is needed. To answer your question on equi-hiring, I think there will be some of it, but not a whole lot.
Okay. My last question before I let you go. Today in the evening, we have the BW Legal World 40 Under 40. What is your advice to young legal leaders and legal influencers on how to build a career? You already elucidated the 10 leadership, but specifically for people who are 30, 33, 35 and have reached a certain stage but are looking to make a leap. What is your advice?
So a couple of things. I think the first bit of advice would be that the playbook for the future is not necessarily the same as the playbook for the past. You will have to have one of the biggest skills that you are going to require is of learnability, of learning new things. There was a particular pattern of how you became a successful lawyer and a practitioner all these years. It's not going to be the same going forward. There will be some parts of the past which will remain, but there will be many that will need to be kind of reinvented. So keep an open mind.
Which one will remain?
And
which will need to be reinvented? Can you
I
dwell
think
on
what
it?
what will remain is one of the basic things of being a successful practitioner is that you have to work tremendously hard. It is an extremely taxing profession, so that's not going away anywhere. But what you will have to be adaptable to is use of technology, and by that I don't mean just kind of Zoom and Microsoft Word and others, but to use technology as part of your delivery model. I think that will change significantly, and you will have to be a little bit more accessible to various different concepts of science and also management theory in terms of as you build your career. I think going forward, you'll find that also people will have to be in charge of their own career. The paternalistic model that you join an organization and somebody will take care of your career for you and you just have to follow their advice, I don't think that's going to work. People will have to take charge of their own career and only seek out help when they need. So the burden of carrying the career, I think, has moved from the mentor to the mentee, and the mentor will probably have to play a more guidance role and not necessarily a leadership where you are taking control of somebody's life. That model, I think, is gone.
Thank you, Mr. Shroff. It's been a pleasure listening to you and conversing with you. We look forward at BW Legal World and BW Business World to do more conversations with you and learn from somebody like you. I'm sure the audience has enjoyed it. The videos and conversations will also be put on the bwlegalworld.com site. So if you want to revisit the 10 leadership lessons that Mr. Cyril Shroff gave, please do visit bwlegalworld.com. It will also be in the October edition of the BW Legal World magazine. So all the best to all of you. And thank you, Mr. Shroff, for inspiring us early in the morning. Thank you. Grateful for what you do for the business community and for the legal community. And you have created many leaders. You have mentored them to be what they are today. So we also express our gratitude. Thank you so much, Mr. Shroff.
Thank you.